January 31st, 1885 and 1st January 1887, the then king of Buganda, now part of Uganda, Kabaka Mwanga II, ordered for the killing of the men that we now know as the Uganda Martyrs. Well, according to historians, some are on the fence as to why the martyrs were killed. Some believe that the martyrs were rebellious. Others believe that no, these men were faithful. And some like to liken this story to the story of Meshach, Abednego in the fire, and of course others liken it to the story of Daniel in the den of lions. So on which side of this story are you? Do you believe that the martyrs were murdered because of their faith, because the king could not stand being upstaged by another king that is known as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Or were they just rebellious to the times and against the rules of the time? Now that's the conversation that we are delving into this morning as Uganda joins the rest of the world to celebrate the as Uganda commemorates the Martyrs' Day. Well, it is the rest of the world joining Uganda to remember the men of Vela that were murdered at the orders of the then King Kabaka Mwanga II. According to history, there were 22 Catholic martyrs and 23 Anglican martyrs that were murdered between the years of 1885 and 1887. And today, June 3rd, we remember them. Now, I will be having this conversation regarding the martyrs. And the question we are asking today, are there secrets in the martyrs' story? Is there something that we don't know? Is there something that we have not been told? Has this story been, sugar-coated? Has it been given some flowers enough or not enough? Are we getting the actual story, or we are just going with sentiments and, of course, going with faith and spirituality without looking deeper into the issue? This is what we are looking at this morning. And I'm having this conversation with Christopher Amos Chikomeko, and he is a lay evangelist at Namirembe Diocese Mission Department. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Good Morning Uganda. Good morning, viewers. It's true, I'm from Namirembe Diocese as a lay evangelist in the Department of Mission. And I'm happy to be here. Well, and we are happy to have you. And as you know, there are so many questions. Yes. When it comes to the story of the martyrs. Now, growing up, this is a story I love to hear. I mean, people dying for their faith. Yes. And of course, it goes to you go to personally ask yourself, if it were up to me, what choice would I take? Exactly. Would I decide to die for my faith? Exactly. Or would I decide to, keep my life, okay? Because one thing I know for sure is that most human beings, we all know that we are going to die, but we are very afraid yes. of death when it beckons. But correct. Before we even delve into the martyr's story, I would like to know what inspired you to study and get yourself well acquainted with the story of the martyrs? I think it's my background. I'm an auditor. I'm an accountant stroke auditor, CPAK. And I am now retired. Okay. So when I retired, I ventured into writing local history. And I have a few books I've written. And as an auditor, I found that I don't just accept stories the way they were told. Mm-hmm. I dig deeper, because that's what auditing is all about. You find out what happened in the, when you are not there. Yes. And that's what I've actually done on the Uganda Martyrs, to find out. To find out. There. So you're the right person to answer some of those questions. So today we are settling some issues here, exactly. Scores. Exactly. Okay, now, so can you provide a brief overview regarding the martyrs? One correction. You gave a date, 31st January 1885. That's what Wikipedia has. To January 1887. Yes. Now that period, I want to correct the end one. To May 1887. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was one called Mwanga Namave. That one was the last one.
Ah.
The one in January.
Is he less known? Is that why
he's
probably...
less known because even the exact spot is not known and is even known to recognized or marked.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense as to why probably whoever has been writing about the matters has not captured that one.
Exactly.
But still, an overview.
An overview is basically the fact that there is a very hidden secret by a gentleman called the Katikkiro of Uganda, Mukasa Muzinga. And that the role he played changes the whole story of the Uganda Martyrs.
Okay.
It is very important to keep him a secret because once you doubt into him, then you lose focus. You lose focus of the Uganda Martyrs, and then you realize, oh my God, there was some internal politics going on in the kingdom. So basically that's it.
Ah, okay. Interesting one. Now, I would like for us to go step by step.
Okay.
You did say that, but before we continue, what you see on the screen is what Namgongo looks like. As of this morning, we will be bringing you a live feed from Namgongo. But for now, everything is ready. Celebrations about to kick off. The place looks very beautiful. A lot of work has been put into this. Government released over 2 billion shillings for the preparation of the Martyrs celebrations. So we will be bringing you a live feed later on, but for now, we continue with our conversation. And my guest here said there is a big secret by the then Katikkiro of Uganda. What's this secret? I want to know.
His name was Mukasa Muzinga. He succeeded a man called Mulere as Katikkiro. Mulere had died. And we must appreciate that in those days, to be a county chief or to be a Saza chief was equivalent to being a senior cabinet minister. So if the Kabaka was to call his cabinet, he would expect the Katikkiro and all the Saza chiefs. So those were the cabinet members. And this Pokino, or Saza chief of Budu, Mukasa Muzinga, got the favor of becoming the new Katikkiro after Mulere. This was in around 1876. Now, Mulere had succeeded his father as Pokino. That is the county chief of Budu. And within months, of course, you will ask, how did Mutesa get to know him so quickly? Because he's a cabinet member. So in the cabinet, Mutesa must have seen this young Mulere and said, this is my man. By the way, he wasn't that young. And then got his favor, he became the Katikkiro. But there is a secret. Mulere and his father and family, they were sorcerers, witches. In fact, as Katikkiro, he was a witch. Now, arriving in the palace, what does he see? Muslims everywhere, speaking Kiswahili, Arabic. And to him, that was a threat to sorcery, to witchcraft. And he began to fight there, and then he had to get rid of this Islamic faith. I'm talking of 1876. That was before the missionaries arrived.
Okay.
And without going into much details there, it was because of him that the Kabaka got rid of the first martyrs or religious martyrs at Namugongo. According to the diary of Emin Pasha, who was a visitor in the palace, he recorded that he was told about 70 Muslims were killed at Namugongo for despising the way the Kabaka used to lead Juma prayers. Apparently, he was the one in charge of Juma prayers, refused to be circumcised. He used to go for Juma prayer leadership wearing those wooden sandals. They used to call them Mikalabanda.
Yes.
Yeah, so he refused to remove them. He was asked to face Mecca. He refused. He said, as king, how could he risk facing one side? What if he's assassinated? And so they began backbiting him. And when Mukasa arrived, the backbiting was so terrible, and he took advantage of that. He said, you as a king, everybody is backbiting you. Why don't we get and punish all these? And this, I was like, oh yeah, we go ahead. And so 70 of them lost their lives, and the Katikkiro now began to strategize on how to get rid of the Islamic faith from the palace. And he started with a mosque. They used to call it Muzingiti, not Muzikiti, but Muzingiti. And he transformed the Muzingiti into a traditional shrine. Can you imagine? A shrine now in the palace. And he was very happy. He was winning. So when the Christians missionaries arrived the following year, oh, it was a shock to him. How could he have succeeded to get rid of one group only for a fresh group to arrive? Because in June, the Christian missionaries arrived, the Anglicans. And then, of course, 3 years later, the Roman Catholics. So he began to strategize on how to amass more power in order to get rid of this new group.
Ah, so what you're saying is that in as much as the story goes that the Kabaka ordered for the killing, or even I should call it a massacre, because if you say 70 Muslims were killed at the time, so the story goes that the Kabaka ordered for the killing of these people, but there was someone behind, there was someone pushing, basically adding firewood to the fire.
With a reason, he wants sorcery to return in the palace to get rid of what he does not believe in as a new Katikkiro. And that is the Islamic faith, and later on, the Christian faith.
The Christian faith, yes.
And then Mutesa dies. Now, there is another secret. Before Mutesa died, there was trouble in the palace. There was smallpox. I think in the early 1880s, Mutesa lost 2 princes, Prince Junju and Prince Ruswata. And then in 1881, Prince Rashid Karema and Prince Mawanda were playing over a loaded single barrel gun, which was loaded, and it went off. So Prince Mawanda died, and he was the favorite of the Kabaka to succeed him. And so he got very, very worried, and he ordered that the remaining prince, who was Mwanga, by then he was about 14, 15, be rushed to his brother's palace on Bunamwaya Hill, Kiwewa. You know, Kiwewas never become kings. So he was very safe. He would be very safe with Chiwewa. So when Mwanga arrived in the Chiwewa palace, what does he find? 2 pages, Kato and Waswa. Now this Waswa is among the names of the martyrs we are remembering at Namugongo today. And these Kato and Waswa were attending catechism classes at Kasubirubya, the mission of the White Fathers.
Yes.
So whenever they return to Kiwewa's palace at Bunamwaya, they will tell Mwanga, this is what we learned today. Okay, Mwanga had been exposed to how to write and read, so that was not a problem. But this Christian literature, Mwanga began to get information, Mwanga began to get interested, and no one wants to talk about that. Everybody talks about Mwanga as somebody who hated Christians, who hated Christianity, which is not true. So when his father died in 1884, and he became the king at the age of 18, a boy, not even a man. The first royal act he did was to invite the Roman Catholic missionaries to return to Uganda, because Mutesa had chased them away in 1882. Why? They gave him wrong medicine. Not wrong, but medicine that didn't work. He was sickly. And so according to him, maybe they wanted to kill him. How could they not give him the right medicine? So he kicked them out. They went to Tanzania, to Tanganyika. So the first act he did was to ask them to return home. And Katikkiro Mukasa could not understand. What? This young man, barely 18, how does he even know that the Roman Catholics were sent away? He didn't know that the young man has been exposed to Christian teaching and that he liked it. As a matter of fact, the other secret is Mwanga was very pro-Roman Catholic.
Well, interesting conversation right here. We are asking, are there secrets in the martyrs story? And from what I'm hearing right now, there are indeed secrets that we didn't know, because it is now being said that the first people to die for their faith were 70 Muslims, and not at the hands of Kabaka Mwanga, but at the hands of his father, Mutesa the First. Now we hear that Kabaka Mwanga actually was pro the Catholic religion, and he invited the Roman Catholics back to the country. Interesting revelations here that I'm having with Mr. Christopher Amos Chikomeko, and he is a lay evangelist at Namirembe Diocese Mission Department Please stick with us because this conversation continues. And later on, we will be bringing you a live feed from Namugongo, where the Martyrs Day celebrations are taking place today. But for now, we continue with the conversation. On to the secrets regarding the Martyrs story. You know, they always say that every day you learn something.
Yes.
And you can never say that you know it all.
Exactly.
Because the story I've had all my life has been Kabaka Mwanga, hated religion, against religion, ordered for the murder. That's the story we know. And now here we are learning something different.
Correct.
But before we continue with this story, I'm curious. You see, most of our story as Africans has been written by someone else, has been written by our colonialists.
Correct.
And because of that, a lot has been hidden away from us. So how do you get your hands onto such information?
Very interesting question. There is what we call archives in our major universities. The biggest, of course, is Makerere Library Archives. And when you enter there, you'll be amazed. They have what they call papers. The Mukasa papers. The Aporokagwa papers. The Kisosonkore papers. So I'm giving you examples.
Yes.
Now, these are not very interesting papers because they are not dirty, they are very clean, they have no pastes, but it takes time and patience to go one by one, and their correspondences. Is writing a letter, is writing something to ask the missionary. So once you go piece by piece, you discover a lot of things. And who do I find there? Wazungus. You find Chinese there, you find British there, very busy, one by one. You never find Africans. You never find Makerere students there. You wonder, no wonder we'll always...
So, another question. Now that you mentioned that this information has been there all this time, how come we don't know it? How come it has not been put on public for us? How come when I search, let's say on Google, for a story about Uganda Martyrs, I can't find it?
The problem is us, especially as Ugandans, our reading culture is so poor. I've just told you, when you go to that archive, there are no Makerere students. There are none. All you find there are researchers from abroad. So that's one. Because we don't, so that means nobody will ever discover that and write. And I think I should give you news that then I'll be the first because I'm writing.
A book is coming out?
I'm writing, a book is coming up.
Interesting.
But I want that book to celebrate 150 years of the Church of Uganda, which will be in 2027. So the process is ongoing. The process is ongoing.
Yes. Now let's get back to the story of the Martyrs.
All right.
So Kabaka Mwanga invites the Roman Catholics back to Uganda. And the Katikkiro is not amused.
Is not amused.
What happens thereafter?
Before we go to the what after, he had amassed more powers.
The Katikkiro.
The Katikkiro.
Yes.
And he calculated very well because he realized the Kabaka would die. The ailment was not getting cured. So how did he amass more powers? He asked him to remain the Pokino. So he remained Pokino. He also asked him to promote him and become the Sechibobo, county chief of Chagwe.
Okay.
And so I told you these are cabinet positions.
Yes.
So he was now the Katikkiro and with 2 extra cabinet positions. So that means when he sat in the cabinet, oh my God, he was very powerful. He was very powerful because even the Kabaka could not attend cabinet sessions anymore. He was sick or he was ill. Then he also decided to convince the Kabaka that you as a sick Kabaka, if you gave me more powers and we became more related, it meant you are very safe. So can we become covenanted brothers? And the Kabaka accepted poor him, he was ill. So they became covenanted brothers.
What do you mean by covenanted
brothers? You
brothers?
Exchange your blood. You cut your navel, the belly button. Blood oozes out. Then you get a grain. You exchange each other's blood with a grain and you eat it. Then you have become blood brothers. Even your children can succeed each other's blood. So the Katikkiro became a prince, a manufactured prince. Because now he's a brother to the king. That was one strategy, to make him very close to the Kabaka. Then the other one, he married a sister of the Kabaka. Of course, there was polygamy then, so this was just an additional wife.
Yes.
So the Katikkiro now became a brother-in-law to the king, whereas others called the Kabaka Kabaka. For him, he would say Moko. Now that was making him very close to the Kabaka. And all these were strategies to amass power.
He was extremely strategic.
So that then when he targets what he wants, to get rid of all these religions, he will have it all. And so, in 1885, as you correctly said, in January, Alexander Mackay decides to go shopping south of Lake Victoria, and he picks 3 boys to accompany him. He got permission for himself. He forgot to ask permission for the boys. And Katikkiro Mukasa said, aha, this is the starting point. Of course, it was a crime to abandon this country without permission. And the boys were found guilty. And the Katikkiro was like, fine, we can forgive them, but there is a condition. This Christianity which they go and learn at Natete, can they deny it? Can they renounce it? If they do, they are free to go. And the young men refused. Serwanga, Lugarama, Kakumba. So he strategized that let it be a public show. Let us show the kingdom when you defy what can happen to you, especially when you defy with this so-called Christianity. So that's how they became the first martyrs of Uganda at Busega. It was publicly done with a strategy that let the people see what can happen to people who refuse to renounce Christianity.
So this first event, this first murder, it wasn't actually at the orders of either the then King Mutesa or even his prince Mwanga.
I want us to remember that in 1885, Mwanga was actually becoming 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah? So 20 years. So
was Mutesa still
dead? He was already dead in 1882.
Okay.
So now we are in 85.
Oh, okay.
This young king is just around 21. So he's really a boy. He's looking up to the father who is so powerful for everything.
He's looking up to the father that became his father because of the covenant that was made with his father, the late
power
king.
He had when he became king. And so he had no alternative but to listen. But of course, as king, the order had to come from him for the killing of the martyrs.
Now, if I'm to speak like a lawyer, it sounds like he was coerced.
Of course. Of course. Because as a young boy of 21, what do you know? What can you really judge? Apart from asking your advisors. And he was the main advisor. Let's kill them. Let's kill them. Let's show the world that when you refuse to renounce Christianity, what would happen to you? There is another secret. In Berlin in 1884, Africa had been partitioned to the great powers. And the Arabs knew. So the Arabs, because with the Islamic faith, Arabs were all over the place, they had informed the Katikkiro that Africa has been partitioned. Very soon they'll come for you. As far as you are concerned, the British are likely to take over here. So that was ringing in their mind. And guess what? They hear news that a Muzungu is coming from the east, which was a taboo. Nobody was allowed to pass through Buganda's back door. Why? Because when Kintu was conquering this area used to have people called Abawawa. It was the Muwawa nation, led by Abala Sange, not Kabakas.
Okay,
and so we had about 50 of them.
Okay, so now I want us, before we come to the end, to come closer to the time when now the order is given and how the order is given to murder now the rest of the martyrs.
The order is not given as such. Circumstances lead to the order.
Which circumstances are these?
You've made an offense by abandoning duty, because that's what really happened.
Those are the first ones.
Even the second ones.
Okay.
Even in the one of Huntington, the one I wanted to talk about, Joseph Barikudembe, abandonment of duty. So even the Namugongo ones, abandonment of duty. So that was the circumstance.
So abandonment of duty to go study catechism.
Exactly, instead of royal duties.
Okay.
And then the biggest question was, what do we do? The Katikkiro was, let's kill them. Mwanga was, wait a minute. Why don't we kill only those who refuse to renounce Christianity? So that we save those who renounce Christianity and are willing to reform. So there was that chance.
He was trying to save.
And that's what makes them martyrs, because they made a choice. They were going to be let free if they renounced. They didn't. They chose to die. That's what makes them martyrs. So that is very important. That even those who say, I know this was political, they fail to recognize that wait a minute, they had a choice. Even if it was political, there was a choice. They chose to die for Christ. That's what makes them martyrs.
This is deep. Very deep and very interesting. But my takeaway from this story is that in as much as history has vilified the late Kabaka Mwanga, actually I feel like with your studying of the martyr's story, you have actually, what's the word? You have cleared his name, so to speak. Because from now what I hear, a 21-year-old king looking up to a man that had so much power, a man that even his father trusted, what could he have done?
Exactly.
What could he have done?
Exactly. That is very, very, very true. And by the year 1888, when the martyrdom was all over, there is another secret, the digging of the Kabaka's lake in Ndeba.
Okay,
that
briefly
is also
as we
another
close.
Story. The missionaries don't want us to know, but the digging is very interesting. That's what made the world discover, or us historians, that actually not all Christians had been got rid of. Because as they dug, they were singing Christian songs. And then, of course, later they they divided themselves into shifts. And that later resulted into arming themselves and overthrowing Mwanga.
The Christians.
But it was a combination of everybody. Muslims, Christians, they all combined and overthrew Mwanga because Mwanga wanted to extend the lake from Ndeba through Kabowa to Kajansi to Lake Victoria. He wanted the waters to travel by boat. And they rebelled. They said
Wouldn't
no.
that
But
have been
the
amazing?
Bazungu don't want us to know that. Why? Because it exposes the story that, hey, wait a minute, you mean there were other Christians around? Yes, there were. So this was not about killing all the Christians. It was, you made an offense, let's get rid of you, but renounce. They refused to renounce, they become martyrs, but others were there. And exposed by the lake digging. So the Bazungu, they jump that time, they don't want to talk about it. Instead, they talk about how Mwanga planned to carry everybody to the islands and drown them in the sea. That's what they write in their books. But why? Why drown them? That because they are Christians. Where did they come from? Very interesting to discover this.
Very interesting. Now, as we close, please tell us more about what happened to this very powerful Katikkiro.
During the coup in 1888, the one I've just talking about, the lake diggers ganging Christian Muslims, and then they overthrow him. That's when they killed him.
Oh, they killed him.
They killed him, and they took the body to Kasubi because he was a manufactured prince. And then the royals refused to bury him there.
At the tombs.
And so they agreed to bury him at the entrance. So when you arrive at the Kasubi royal tombs, the very first hut as you enter, that's where the grave of the Katikkiro is. So he was buried there as a rejected semi-prince. Because you can only be a prince by blood, not by manufacturing.
Well, according to the laws of the time, a covenant could bring you closer to something like that.
The princes didn't agree. For them, they said, no, a prince is born. He cannot be.
How old was Kabaka Mwanga when he was exiled?
He was exiled several times. So which exile are you talking about? In 1888? He was around 23 years.
23.
23 years.
Now, this paints a different picture from the picture we have always known. And this is the thing about history. You always learn something new, especially if you dig deeper into the issue and try to find out more for yourself. Now, I've grown up with the martyr's story, and I believe so have you. And the story that we've always known, now there is another twist to it, which makes me believe that probably these orders, yes, were given by the Kabaka Mwanga because he was the Kabaka, but because he was being coerced by someone more powerful, by someone that was more strategic, over ambitious, and wanted everything for himself. And that is the Katikkiro of the time. What was his name again?
Mukasa Muzinga.
Katikkiro Mukasa Muzinga. So if you're a student of history and you love history, probably you could now go on a reading spree to find out more regarding the Martyrs story. We have been asking the question, are there secrets to the Martyrs story? And I've been having this conversation with Christopher Amos Chikomeko, who is a lay evangelist at Namirembe Diocese Mission Department. Thank you so much for shedding so much light on the story that we have been told, but in a different way.
Thank you.
And Good Morning Uganda continues. My name is Olive Monica Najima. Stick around because we still have so much more coming your way. Like I was saying earlier, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the Nigerian writer, says the danger of a single story makes it doesn't mean that the other stories are untrue, but it means that the story being told is incomplete. And the same goes for the story of the Uganda Martyrs. We have known a different version of that story, which also brings into the question, who wrote this story and what was the benefit? Why was it relevant to them to write the story we know as it was written? Why is it that we have excerpts of this story that have never been told before? Well, today you get to hear the other side of the story of the Uganda Martyrs as it is being unearthed here on Good Morning Uganda. We have had a few contentions when it comes to the Uganda Martyrs story, where some people are of the view that the Martyrs were actually not just faithful, they were rebellious against the then king, Kabaka Mwanga II. But then there are also others who say no, they were martyrs because they refused to denounce their faith, and then they were killed because they decided to choose faith, to choose a God they had never seen, a God they didn't know they will ever see, but they had faith that they will see this God. So they chose him over following the orders of the king, or over playing basically over allowing themselves to go with the matters of the day. And these events took place around 1885 up until around January 1887. Actually, in this new story, I've been told that there is a martyr who was killed around Namamve, and the exact location where he was murdered is not known, and he was killed around May 1887. So that means actually the story of the martyrs from January 31st, 1885 goes on up until May 1887. But you see, the danger of a single story is that we only knew one side. We only knew the matters that have been documented over the years, which also begs for the question, why is it that some parts of the story were not documented? But I'm not the expert on this subject. I have the expert, a man that has taken time to read and research and dig deeper when it comes to the Martyrs story. So if you're asking the question, are there secrets regarding the Martyrs story? The answer is yes. But I won't answer that question for you. Let him give us the details. And this is Mr. Chikomeko Amos, Christopher Amos, who is a lay evangelist at Namirembe Diocese Mission Department. If you missed us in the first session of the show, we are continuing the conversation that we had earlier with Mr. Chikomeko. Welcome back.
Good morning, viewers. And yes, you are very right. We earlier on saw a few of these secrets, and so let's see some more.
Yes, let's see some more. Actually, before I made you come to a close earlier, there is something you wanted to mention right before. So we had the first three martyrs that were murdered as they were escorting one of the missionaries. And then you were about to talk about the other batch that was killed next.
Correct. And the other batch had only one, who is Joseph Balikudembe, the head of all the palace pages. And his crime was basically to give a word or to say a word for Huntington, the one they wanted to kill and they actually killed. So he was called a spy, he was called a terrible person. How could you give a word for somebody you even don't know? So poor man met his death. So he became the third martyr. He was also beheaded, Nakivubo. And again, Katikkiro Mukasa was very happy that now a whole palace head is gone. But again, as much as he had made a crime, there was that option. If you renounce Christianity, we can pardon you. But he refused. So he was beheaded. That's why he's a martyr. And then we now move into the other biggest batch. It's called the Munyonyo batch. 3 of them. Dennis Sebugwao, Musa Mukasa, and then the following day, Anderea Kagwa. So 3 martyrs. And then there is a whole batch of martyrs killed on the way from Munyonyo to Namgongo. Ponsiano Ngondwe Muchamula. Athanasius Vazekuketa Nachivobo. Elia Bumbwa and another one Mlago. Gonzaga Gonza Lubao Hill as you go to Naria. So you see, there were several on the way, not necessarily at Namgongo alone.
Well, as we speak about the history of the martyrs and answering the question as to whether or not there are secrets regarding the martyrs' story, what you see right now is a live feed from the Anglican side of the shrine in Namgongo, and we will also be bringing you live feeds from the Catholic side, but right now this is the Anglican side in Namgongo, where also martyrs from the Anglican faith were murdered. So we have the Anglican martyrs and we have the Catholic martyrs that were all murdered at the orders of the king Kabaka Mwanga. But of course we are also learning other aspects to that story. And stick with us because this conversation continues with Mr. Chikomeko, and I'll let you continue.
Yeah, there are some who escaped, and those are never talked about.
Because they were not martyrs.
They were not martyrs, but they would have been martyrs
if they
had they not escaped or had they not denied Christianity.
So there are some that actually
renounced Christianity. Not because that's what they felt in their heart, but because they were just like me. I think I would be scared to be killed.
Yes.
So they were scared to die and they ran away, or they said, for me, I give up. And that's why you see after the martyrdom, there are still Christians around because they were there. And since God looks at our hearts, I'm sure God knew that these are denying me not because they don't know me, it's because they don't want to die.
Okay.
And the most interesting thing is that God used them.
Actually,
those who escaped.
I was actually coming to the question of how did the Uganda Martyrs, but also those that did not, those that were not murdered, so they didn't become martyrs. How did they influence the expansion of Christianity within the country, the spread of Christianity within Uganda? I
think that's a very good question. That particularly, let me give an example of somebody like Duta Kitakule. He has papers at Makerere where he gives the story. We escaped, we left Natete, we passed here, so we went home. He was from Bulemezi, Sekiwunga, around there. Then he said they arrived there, their father told them, no, you can't stay here, you take your people. They ran away to Bunyoro. Now the Bunyoro of that time was not Hoima and Masindi, it was Singo. So as near as Singo, then in Singo they were able to go all the way to Ankole. But you see, this Duta Kitakule later became the first pioneer Anglican priest. Okay, there were 3, but he's one of them. So I think you see how God used them. It's not really that they denied or they ran away. They were just scared of dying.
And probably God had a different purpose for them.
Exactly. Others like Apollo Kagwa. When the 1900 agreement was made, he was there to make sure that the church gets land.
Oh, Apollo Kagwa was one of the people that ran away.
For him, he didn't run away. He was the cashier of the palace, so the Kabaka forgave him. But when now, on the following day, the 26th of May, everybody assembled, and they had to make a choice. Those who want to renounce, stay on the right. If you cannot renounce, go on my left. Kagwa remained on the right. So that means he actually renounced Christianity.
Yes.
But you see, God uses them. In 1900, there he is, the Bazungus are dishing out land, and the church also gets. And Apurukagwa makes sure that the church gets. The Anglicans got 40 square miles, the White Fathers got 35 square miles. The Mill Hill missionaries of Nsambia got 17 square miles.
And that's where now we see Rubaga Cathedral, Namirembe Cathedral.
And everywhere in Uganda where you see the church, all that was because this escapee, this person who denied Christ, was later used by God.
So it goes to show that there is always a purpose.
Yes.
God doesn't make mistakes. And from this story, I'm learning that maybe not all of them were meant to die. So we've also heard that some were burnt. Can you share more on how these martyrs were killed, the ways through which they were killed?
Correct. They were the first ones were speared, but a spear really doesn't kill somebody. You simply die from bleeding. So the Kabaka, after spearing Musa Mukasa and later on Dennis Sebugwao, he instructed, because those were the very first ones, on the 25th of May. He speared Musa Mukasa, he speared Dennis Sebugwao, and then he instructed the soldiers to take them further away and finish them off. So they were speared. But then, like Joseph Walikudembe was beheaded.
By Mukajanga. Was it by Mukajanga?
No, not by Mukajanga, by the soldiers. They used to call them Aramboa. So actually I think they were taking him, but he refused to go all the way. Finish me here. And so they finished him there. All the others they killed on the way, they refused to go to Namgongo. They said, there is no reason why I'm going there. Kill me here. And they will be mutilated.
Why was Namgongo very important? Why is it that they were being dragged to Namgongo? Because
the kingdom had what they call the public executions ground, and that was Namugongo. Then there was the royals' executions ground. That was at Nakatema and Sanji. So they had a prison there and an executions ground. But none of the pages were royals. Although later on you hear about somebody called Crea Narumansi, the sister of Mwanga.
Yes.
Well, her period and the story is different. But all the others were commoners, and therefore they had to be executed at the executions ground. Waibulori and Nachianja, the assistant executioner, had a residence at what we call Bulori. And in those days, wherever there was a mass murder, he was allowed to pick one of the would-be massacred and be killed at his residence. So when he was asked, who do you want to kill here at your residence? He said, Karoli Rwanga, who was the head of the pages at that time. So that's why Karoli Rwanga was killed at the Roman Catholic grounds, to keep that right. Then all the rest to the Anglican site today, where all the rest were killed. But the whole of that was executions ground.
So, okay, now that you mentioned that, does it mean that some that were killed from the Anglican shrine, what is today the Anglican shrine, were not necessarily Anglicans?
No. No. As I said, only one, Karoli Rwanga, to follow that right, was killed at the Roman Catholic shrine. The rest
at the Anglican shrine.
There was a big trick called Ndazara Zadde. So that's where they were tied as they looked for the firewood and then finally burnt. But there was a miracle, which nobody wants to talk about. As they burnt them, they burst into a song. Normally when you burn somebody, you would be choking. You would be, But here were martyrs singing. Now that was a miracle. That was a miracle which scared Mukajanga very much. What is happening? This was supposed to be cursing me. How come they are bursting into a song? Now that was a very divine miracle, which we can't even understand up to today.
Indeed. I remember, I've heard that story before of them bursting into a song, but then some people have dismissed it as a myth that Christians are being too much and doing the most. And but still, the people who have always said that they burst into a song likened it to what happened when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in the fire, and they were just walking about and singing praises. So the same happened with the martyrs.
Exactly. And if you study martyrs all over the world, there is always a miracle. Even in Europe, where they used to throw them into the amphitheaters for the lions to devour them.
Yes.
You would realize that the lions would not devour them. And they would come and they will kill them with swords because the lions have refused to devour them. So there is always a miracle.
So the story of Daniel also continues on with the martyrs in modern day after Christ.
Exactly.
Interesting, very, very interesting. So now we go back to the digging of the lake.
Yes.
What inspired the Kabaka to have the now known Kabaka's Lake in Katwe to be dug?
As I said earlier, he wanted it extended.
Yes, to Lake Victoria.
Yeah, but what inspired him, he loved water. And in January of 1886, Mengo Palace caught fire. There was fire. So the entire royal household shifted to Munyonyo. He had several palaces. He had a palace in Zambia. He had a palace at Munyonyo. He chose Munyonyo. And the few months he spent in Munyonyo, he fell in love with the water. So when he returned to Mengo, he could not stand not seeing water. So basically, that's what led to the digging of that lake.
Okay. And now, as the digging was going on, there was a coup.
No, the digging was finished.
Oh, it was
The lake was opened. It is when he said, now that the lake is done, let's do more work. Let's extend this lake. Through Kabowa and Kajans, that the lake diggers said, you Kabaka, we are not going to do this.
Why? They were tired?
There were 3,000 of them, and this was 1887, 1886, stroke those 2 years. So there are no hoes, there are no tools to use, they are using baskets. So it was very tiresome.
Well, we take you back to the Anglican site in Namgongo, and we continue with the celebration of the Uganda Martyrs. So keep with us. We will be giving you more details regarding the Uganda Martyrs, both from the Anglican site and from the Catholic site. You won't miss a thing, because every detail that you need, you're going to find it here on UBC. So you were saying, before we continue, yes, we are looking at the Anglican site in Namgongo. It's taking shape. Prayers are starting around 9 a.m. this morning. So what you see are people arriving, dignitaries arriving and settling in before the prayers begin. The Speaker of Parliament, Anita Annette Among, has just arrived at the site, and other dignitaries that are with her have also arrived, and the prayers will be beginning in the next 9 minutes. That will be at 9 a.m. As you can see, the place is very beautiful, nicely decorated, calm. There is security. All the roads that lead to Namgongo have security there, so don't worry about your security. You're going to be safe. And of course, there are a few traffic diversions that we will be looking at later on. But for now, what I know for sure is that if you're coming from the areas of Chira, you cannot go through Charlie Wajala. That road has been closed off, so you will have to go through Najera. And for those that are heading to Nalia, you may also have to look at the diversion routes that have been created before you get to Namgongo. If you want to be a pilgrim, you could park your car maybe somewhere in Chira and then you walk, because the entire stretch has been demarcated for pilgrimages. So pilgrims, I beg your pardon. So you can continue your pilgrimage to Namgongo, so that you can also have a say that I trekked and I was a pilgrim in the year 2024 going to Namgongo Martyrs Shrine. Now, coming back to the studio, I'm still having a conversation and we are still answering the question, are there secrets when it comes to the Martyrs story? Yes. And what I've learned this morning from Mr. Chikomeko, there are many secrets from the Martyrs story. He said that the Kabaka's Lake in Katwe was dug by over 3,000 men. But now we are talking about the 1800s. So we didn't have modern day equipment to dig a lake. What a feat.
Yes, so they got very tired. There is no way they could extend it through Kabowa and Kajansi, so they had to rebel. But unfortunately, the missionaries didn't want to capture that because, as I said earlier, it was exposing things. But there is another secret.
Another secret?
Dr. Janka is a German man. He was coming from Bunyoro, and as I said earlier, Bunyoro was not Hoima Masindi, it was Singo as well.
Singo.
So as he passed through Singo, he says he counted over 200 dead bodies or dead people. And he used to ask, what happened to this one? What happened to this one? And the people were telling him the soldiers killed them because they refused to renounce Christianity. That one was killed because he refused to renounce Christianity. And Dr. Janka says he counted 200 bodies. Unfortunately, he did not record the name. So that means we have undocumented martyrs. Many of them, of course, were not baptized, but the scripture is very interesting. This is what it calls baptism by fire. But I don't want to preach.
You can tell us a little bit about baptism by fire.
I don't want to go
in
there.
the context of those that were killed on the way.
There, but all I can say is that since they were not even baptized, but they could not renounce Christianity, and the soldiers killed them. And if this Dr. Janka is correct, that is, I don't see how a German would lie. He must have counted the body, because maybe what we haven't talked about is the fact that in Mityana, there was a big center of Christians, and indeed they were killed as martyrs, and those are recognized. I think we have about 6 of them recognized. Mityana, originating people. Noah, I think Mawagali, Matthias Mulumba, although that one was brought to Kampala. Lukabana Bachintu, that one also was brought all the way to Namugongo. But there was a Chibuka, there was a Mwanga, there was a Chitogo. I think those 3.
Okay.
So there are.
So now coming back to modern day times, and as you can see, the choir is starting to serenade those that are present at Namugongo Martyrs Shrine. They are starting. This year's celebrations are led by the Nebi Diocese, and the chief celebrant for the 2024 Martyrs Day celebrations is from Nigeria. And we are going to be giving you the choir with their harmonies as they take us through the day's celebrations. But before we branch off, we still continue with the conversation regarding whether or not there are secrets in the martyrs' story. Now, coming back to today, what would you say has been the impact of the martyrs' story to Uganda's cultural heritage and also Christianity?
Somebody called Tertullian, he's a church father of the 2nd and 3rd century, said the words that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And how true for us today, that whenever we reflect, we get encouraged, we get faith, and we are able to move on as Christians. But unfortunately for today, somebody called Tefiro Sonkore gave us Anglicans 20 acres at Namugongo. After death, his son gave us another 16 acres.
Making it 36.
When you come to Namugongo today, we are hardly 5 acres. But what do you see in the area he donated to us? Bungalows all over the place. So that explains that maybe even us as new Christians today, the Uganda Martyrs and the faith we should have taken from them is very, very questionable. Because 31 acres cannot be seen anymore. And yet this donation was to us.
Okay. So what does that say about Christianity today as a whole?
That's what I mean, that it is not that deep. It's shallow. Yes, we are celebrating, but those who are celebrating, if you look at some of them, they are behind the loss of those 31 acres. So it is not that deep.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. But away from the land issues, how about the Christians themselves that throng to Namugongo, to the Catholic and even Anglican shrine? Are they really trekking? When you look at the purpose for their trek to the shrines, is it really Christian oriented, or for some it is something totally different?
You are asking a question which I want to put a reason as a doctrinal question. Because when you look at a Roman Catholic, the doctrine and the Uganda Martyrs attaches them in such a way that, oh, for them what they are doing, I can't even explain it. Because you see, for them, they can even ask those martyrs to pray for them.
Yes.
For us, we can't. All prayers are through the Lord Jesus Christ. So that means that for a Roman Catholic, oh yes, 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 yes. But for us Anglicans who make the trip, who make the pilgrim, it's real faith. It's real faith that makes them go.
Okay. Yeah. Have you been to the shrines yourself?
Yes, every year.
What are some of those poignant stories or experiences that you have had over the years?
The mere fact that, for example, as a historian, that when we call the place Nakiyanja, Nakiyanja has never been the name of that place.
What is the actual name?
Is the name of a swamp very far away, 2 kilometers away. As a historian, I get interested. Things like why do we allow ourselves to misappropriate what we are given to develop the place until the state says, no, let's do it ourselves. So the amphitheater you see today has been built by the state, not by the church. But not because they haven't given us. They gave, but they couldn't see anything coming up. So for me, when I go to Namugongo, I cry. It's all tears all the time. That we haven't lived the faith of the Uganda Martyrs. We are deceivers. You know, people who show off. That's all we do. My generation.
So, in your opinion, do you feel like the faith that the martyrs died for and the pain they experienced and the loss their families experienced to a degree was in vain?
Not in vain, but it is not marching. Theirs and ours are not marching, but of course not in vain.
Not in vain.
Not in vain.
So what do you think, what would you say about the martyr's death? Would you say that it has contributed to national unity?
Oh yes, oh yes, very, not
How
even
so?
national, even regional unity.
Okay.
A great deal.
How so?
For example, people who really have faith, and they would say if they did it long ago when they didn't even have the whole Bible, for us who have the whole Bible, and then you just feel like you have to be better than them. Yeah.
Better than them.
Yeah.
So it makes a Christian
Much more faithful.
Much more faithful, looking at what has been done by people before. Well, we are delving into the story of the Uganda Martyrs, but we chose to look at it differently. You have had the story and you know most of the ins and outs of the story, but you have had a single story. And like I said earlier, the danger of a single story is not that it is untrue, it is that it is incomplete. There are certain facets of that story that have not been told, that have not been said. And now, looking at the Uganda Martyrs and their story, we look at certain aspects that have never been shared. Personally, there are things I have learned today. And I believe that if you've been following this conversation from the beginning, there are things that you have also learned today. For instance, recently the Muslims were given June 10th as the day that they will commemorate Martyrs' Day in the Muslim faith. But some people were like, Muslims just want to be part of this and maybe partake in whatever government releases as money or funds to help in the preparations of Martyrs' Day celebrations. But today we learn that 70 Muslims were killed, not at the orders of Kabaka Mwanga, but at the orders of his father, Kabaka Mwanga. Did you know this story? I didn't. But if you did, now we get to even know more regarding the same story. That's why Mr. Chikomeko is here with us. He's a historian and he has taken his time to understand and research and read and dig deeper into the Martyrs' story. And today on UBC, Good Morning Uganda, we have been able to unearth so many facts that were staring in our eyes, but we didn't know them because they are not widely shared. He says he's going to release a book I can't wait.
3 years from now.
3 years from now. I can't wait to read that book. Well, the Martyrs, the prayers are about to start at the Martyrs shrines, both at the Catholic shrine and at the Anglican shrine, and we will be bringing you a live feed from that side. But for now, we continue with our story regarding whether or not there are secrets in the Martyrs story. And so we have touched on where the Christians get encouragement
Yes.
in their faith,
Yes.
by what was done, but also you have a few grievances
Yes.
regarding how certain aspects have been handled, like the land issue,
Showing the lack of faith.
showing a lack of faith.
Yeah.
And let's go to the youth today.
Yes,
You see, today we are living in the global,
Correct.
in the digital age.
correct.
And because of that, we have been exposed to many things. Some of it has not been really the best information that we
Correct.
are getting.
Correct.
Today, the youth are grappling with issues of depression,
Correct.
but also grappling with issues of pornography
Correct.
that is readily available on the
Correct.
internet.
Correct.
So, as a historian, but also as an evangelist, how do we bring the youth back to God? Because today when you go to church, except a few churches, you'll find that most pews are filled by the elderly and somewhat older people, very few young people in church. How do we bring them back? How do we get them off certain things that are endangering their lives and their minds that they find on the internet?
I could say that there is a generation which I can only say, God help us. But if I was to find a solution, I would rather go back to Sunday school. So make proper teachings in the Sunday school. Give Sunday school a lot of money. Give that ministry a lot of money, because it is those as they grow up who then make sure that the church is what it should be. But now you are asking me, people who are now in the youth stage, their Sunday school was and the Baganda say once the tree has been an to make it would be very hard.
Akacha mama mera bokagolola kamenyeka bumenyezi.
So I would ask for our church worldwide, actually not even worldwide, but Africa, invest in Sunday school. Then tomorrow's church and tomorrow's youth will be there.
I hear what you're saying, because even when it comes to education, it is said for you to have an all-round, a holistic student, then you need to invest deeply into early childhood learning. So going back to church, Sunday school,
Correct.
it matters.
Correct.
Going back to church, Sunday school matters. And I hear you. I've gone to some churches, even Anglican churches. I won't name some of them.
Yeah.
And I realized, I'm a parent, and I realized that at the time when I attended a few of these churches, they actually didn't have a Sunday school. So you go with a 2-year, 3, 4, 5-year-old and sit with them in the adult church. The
Attention span is zero there.
attention span zero. The way that the word is being taught is suitable for the adults.
Exactly.
And the children are missing out. Why do you think churches are not giving so much effort to Sunday school?
I would say that it is lack of sensitization. Our church leaders have not been sensitized enough. When they see the kind of budgets the Sunday school would make, it doesn't make sense to some of them. But I know for you, you don't want to mention churches, but for me, let me mention a church like Watoto. When they discovered how wealthy that is, you can now see how Watoto is blossoming. So I think it's very, very important to sensitize our church leaders that the right place to start is Sunday school, and give them the examples of churches like Watoto and see what is happening.
And I like that you mentioned Watoto, because at least I can testify that the Sunday school over there is top notch. I've seen parents that are coming from the Catholic side. They're not born again, but they take their children there because they like the Sunday school. Well, what you see is the Anglican site in Namgongo, and that is the beautiful choir made up of more than